Hi guys, it's April, and I have a book review for you. Of course, I will do this book review the same way I do all of my other book reviews. I will have my non-spoiler section up front, followed by all of the spoils that happen as I read this book after that, and I'll let you know when that happens. But since this is book 5 in the Sevenwaters series, there's gonna be spoilers for all of the other books that happened before. I just thought I'd put that out there. Seer of Sevenwaters by Juliet Marillier, like I said, is book 5 in the Sevenwaters series. This centers around Sybil, who is training to be a druid. She's about to make her final pledge into the druid lifestyle, but first she visits all of her sisters on the Isle of Ines Ella, which is the island where Johnny trains all of his warriors. Of course, while she is there, there's a shipwreck and only a few survivors. One of those survivors has amnesia, and she instantly forms a connection with him. As the story goes on, this young amnesic man starts to regain some of his memories, and the shipwreck is starting to come into question, while at the same time, Sybil is torn between love and the druidic lifestyle that she's pretty sure she's supposed to be on. Now, this book has all of the same beautiful Juliet Marillier writing. I can't fault it for that, but there's something in this storyline that just left me really wanting. A lot of it was very slow paced because you have a lot of this buildup of what happened around the shipwreck, and you have a lot of Sybil's inner monologue trying to decide what life is and why life is, and all of those young life questions that all of us have as we're growing up. But I struggled with this one mainly because I really love Juliet Marillier's romances because they are this slow build, they're this slow burn. You see this relationship develop between these two characters because of a series of events, things they have to overcome, but in this book, there really wasn't any of that. It came really close to being insta-lovey. You have 500 pages. It shouldn't feel like insta-love, but it did. But I did really like the shipwreck plotline. Unfortunately, that took backstage, and that was almost secondary to everything else that was going on. I'm starting to realize that this second trilogy in the series of Sevenwaters is mostly centered around Kothel and everything that is happening because of his father and the war that is happening between the two different realms, which is fairly interesting, but coming off of the original Sevenwaters trilogy where you have generation after generation after generation, just sticking with one generation feels different, and I'm not entirely sure I want more of this generation. You're starting to see a lot of the same characters from different perspectives, which is nice, but at the same time, I feel like there was so much development in the first trilogy that the second trilogy is starting to suffer because we're starting to rehash a lot of the same things. This book did a lot of looking back into what happened in the past and retelling all of those stories rather than moving forward and telling its own story, and I think it suffered a little bit for it. But overall, it was a good story. It has Juliet Marillier's wonderful writing. It has her character development, even if some of the characters weren't my all-time favorite like they have been in the past. And there was a mystery there that just kept me turning the pages, even if there was a lot of slow bits. So if you did like the original trilogy and you have read the 4th book, you're gonna want to read this 5th book because you're gonna want some answers. I'm just saying. So this is the point in which I start just babbling about random things in my head, which will probably contain spoilers. If you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend that you go and read this book and come back and we can start a conversation because I like talking about books, if you can't tell. So come back. But if you have read this book or you just like to spoil yourself, we shall carry on. So this book probably isn't my favorite in the whole series of Sevenwaters so far. It's probably the lowest ranking one for me right now because the relationship between Felix and Sybil, I think she was going for a Florence Nightingale kind of approach to the romance, but with the way Sybil's character was supposed to start the celibate life and where she was starting to go with her life, it felt a little forced. There was a lot of insta-lovey feel to it, and then a lot of whining from Sybil, which is probably why she is my least favorite main character of any of these series so far, which is really weird because seeing her in the last book, I was intrigued by her. So I was kind of excited to see a story from her perspective. But once we got in there, you could tell that she was very young and that she saw the world in black and white. And because of that, a lot of the book just felt really angsty with nothing pushing it forward. And I didn't enjoy it. But I think the whole shipwreck storyline is what really pulled me through the story. I had a very, very, very large guess that the woman was one of the sea monsters from the very beginning, just because of how she was communicating and what she was doing and all of her actions leading up to that point. It didn't really surprise me that that was what all of it was leading up to. I did find it very interesting that we have been dealing with a lot of the Fae in this whole story arc, but all of a sudden we brought in these kind of mystical monsters. The second series is seeming to dive more into the magical realm and the shock value rather than the character development of the first series. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. So if you have any thoughts on these books or this book or everything in general, just let me know down below because I am floating and trying to figure out my life right now. So start a conversation down below and I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.